As you can see here, I'm working on the temple part of the headdress, and basically I'm going back to my photocopy here and just using that as a template. And of course, the trick is to get it to line up with the other plane to make sure that it looks right. And then once I remove that material from those grooves, I had to put in another piece just because it was kind of rough up in there. After I sanded it, so I just wanted to make it look presentable. All right, and I've also added blocks to remove my extensions. And these blocks are oversized, as you can see, and I'll trim them down later when I work on extending those bands around the back side of the headdress. Now, once I'm done with the ears, we can go ahead and attach this facial portion onto this portion here. We can glue that down so I can start to think about carrying these bands over the top side. But I can't do that until the ears are in place. I just think it'd be easier just to be able to remove this portion and work on the ears versus having them right up against here. One thing I have learned is that this stuff is extremely soft and is very easy to dent, even with fingernails. I've done that, so I figure if I work on the ears apart from having it attached, that would make things a lot easier. So now I'm ready to work on the ears. And so what I've done is I sketched out these little templates for the ears that should be to scale pretty much, hopefully. And I'm just going to use my Dremel with a little grinder on the tip of it. And so hopefully we should be able to shape these ears up. Okay, so as you can see here, I use Timelapse to speed this up. And I use my hot wire cutter here for removing larger portions of material. And then the Dremel was mainly used for the detail of the inner ear, of course. And you just have to work with it and just whittle away at it, so to speak, until you get the desired result. Okay, the strategy I decided to use to extend these bands or these grooves around the back side of the headdress was to tack down paper here very lightly with rubber cement. And that way you can take them up and adjust them and so forth, and space them to make sure that they look right. And then I traced them over with a marker and I was ready to cut them out. Okay, as you can see here, I began to remove material from inside those bands that extend around the back side of the headdress. But I have them all mapped out, the lines, and I got a little repairing to do there before I can complete that. And I also tacked the ears down temporarily just to get an idea of what that's going to look like. Okay, my strategy for removing that material is basically I take a razor and cut down straight, and then I come back at a angle and remove that material to square it off. And once I've done that, there's usually a little crown that's left in the center and that needs to be smoothed out. And so I just take a longer knife and smooth that out as much as possible. And then I come back with a sanding stick, a fingernail sander basically, and just smooth everything out. Once I completed the bands along the front part of the headdress there, I went ahead and finalized my ear placement. And with that out the way, I can go ahead and join the two pieces. I used Gorilla Glue to bind the pieces together, and what's good about that is it gives you a little time to maneuver it around and make sure everything's lined up. Okay, so with this frontal piece here permanently attached to the front of the headdress, this portion here, I had to go back and patch some of the gaps and damage that happened when I was working with it. So now this is all one piece. This is lightly tacked down to this back portion. And that will allow me to go ahead and extend my paper stripes like I did before. Okay, as I'm extending these bands around the back side of the headdress, these grooves I should say, I thought I'd share a little bit of the process and some of the challenges that I'm running into. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got my little paper template, and on the front side I made a separate paper template for all these grooves. This time I got a little smarter, and I'm using this same template, and I put these little slits in it so that I can slightly adjust it because of the curvature. And I'm just going down, setting them in place and bringing them down to the bottom. And this is all done just by eyesight and stepping back and looking at it and making sure it looks right. Okay, as you can see here, I'm laying down my template, and basically I'm looking at the band above it to try and match the width of it. And the good thing about using the rubber cement is that I can pull it up and make minor adjustments. And then once I've done that, I go over it with the marker. Now the marker is not etched in stone. I don't necessarily cut right along that marker line. I'm still looking to make sure that it looks right, and I'm making the necessary adjustments. And using the same process as before, I remove the material from inside the grooves and just sand it out and make sure it looks right. As you can see here, I removed the back side of the headdress from the rest of the sculpture so I can better work on the point where all of these bands converge. I'm using the same technique as before to try to remove as much material as possible. But as you can imagine, those grooves are getting very narrow, and it's getting a little harder for me to do that. So once I removed as much as I possibly could using that method, I decided to get my adjustable soldering gun on and I put it on a very low setting, as you can see here, and I was able to go in and clear up a lot of those grooves and make it look a lot more presentable. Okay, at the point where all these bands converge on the back side of the headdress, there is a ponytail of sorts. And this ponytail extends down the back side of the base of the sculpture. I think it would be easier for the ponytail to be all one piece. And so what I want is the top part of the ponytail to fit into this notch that I'm cutting out here on the back side of the headdress. So it's my intention to have a seamless interface where the top part of that ponytail meets the back portion of the headdress. Okay, so as you can imagine, it took quite a bit of work to get all these to converge and to carve them out, but I think it looks pretty good. And so we're gonna call it a wrap on this particular video, and Hopefully next time we will start working on the base and see if we can't wrap this thing up. Thanks for watching.